Hi, Duncan, Tom. And Brett. Hi, Brett. Okay, it is 4:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. And a notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. If there's no objection to approving the, back up. Recommend that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 as amended, the January 25th, 2022 regular meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at the Municipal Hall, 161 3rd Street in Tofino, BC. And I'll just have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Thick. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We're going to go to adoption of agenda. Now there's an amendment. There's an update to item 10.3, an updated Appendix 1 that's provided in the January 25th, 2022 agenda. And also, I would like to make a motion to move item 10.10 to the consent agenda as item 4.2. So that's actually an announcement of an amendment and a motion. Seconded by Councillor Steer. Any objection or comment? All in favor? And then I will move adoption, and that adoption is approved. Okay, motion's carried. Consent agenda then. If there's no objection to approving the consent agenda as presented, I will move adoption. Seeing no objection, consent agenda is adopted. Public comment on question items or public comment on agenda items.
Thank you, Mayor Law. We don't have any requests for comments at the moment, but I will call once. We have 2 attendees in the meeting. If they'd like to speak, I'll call twice. And seeing none, calling a 3rd time. And there are no requests for comments on the public agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Best. Moving on to the mayor's report then. Just want to, first of all, acknowledge the water collision that happened today, and I want to thank Auxiliary Coast Guard, our own Tofino Coast Guard, the first responders from the fire department, as well as emergency responders, ambulance, and of course all our nurses and doctors that attended that call. And I'm very thankful that there was no loss of life, and we wish everybody a speedy recovery. And a special thanks we do have, of course, Councillor Steer, who was on that call here with us. So thank you personally, Councillor Steer. Would also remind the public that February 2nd, we have an all-day budget meeting. And I'm very excited to announce that people can go onto our new website, tofino.ca, and find that all-day budget meeting and register and attend. It's a very important part of municipal governance is finance, and this is an excellent time to get up to date on where we are with municipal finances and our 5-year plan. And a little note, I've noticed many new things around town. There's new garbage cans. There's new bike rack at North Chessman parking lot. Looks superb. And I've noticed over the year many of these new constructs go up and with little acknowledgement. And often once they're up, we all forget that they weren't there not too long ago. So I just want to commend our crew for continuing to work on Tofino in that matter quietly. And in the background, it's making Tofino a better place. And I just want to point that out. And again, thank staff for all their hard work behind the scenes. Moving on to delegations. Do we have any delegations? I believe we do not. Correspondence, I have none listed. So we're moving on to presentations and reports. We have 10.1 District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Bylaw, number 1311/2021 is up for adoption. We do not have a presentation, so I'm going to ask council if councillor would like to make a motion. Oh, sorry, Chief Baker, do we have a presentation on this one?
I did have just a couple of slides prepared if council wishes to have any further clarification. Although if you wish to move forward, that's entirely up to you. Just let me know.
If you would like, if you've got some slides prepared, Chief Baker, then go ahead and share them. That'd be great.
I'll just take one moment, please. There we go. Sorry, I'm just having a moment here getting my presentation up. And sorry, it just doesn't seem to be coming up at the moment.
It's okay, no pressure.
Just one moment here, I'll be right with you.
Technology.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure.
It's a blessing and a curse.
I'm not sure why, but it's not bringing up that option for me to share it.
Through the mayor, Chief Baker, I've just made you a co-host of the meeting. That might increase some kind of options for you. Want to try one more time?
There we go. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, my moment of panic is over, hopefully. Fire and life safety bylaw. So just a bit of a background will bring us back up to speed because it has been a little while since first three readings. This bylaw was first introduced to council at the October 12th, 2021 regular council meeting. This new bylaw is intended to replace the current Tofino Volunteer Fire Department bylaw from 964 from 2004. And this bylaw did receive its first three readings and had quite a bit of support from council at the time. At that October 12th meeting, council had not yet seen the first draft of the 2022 to 2026 financial plan, and staff would like to ensure that the cost increases of the proposed bylaw are considered with the expenses of the financial plan in mind. The proposed fire and life safety bylaw will increase the rates for fire department attendance to calls and practices from $15 per call to $20 for an estimated increase of about $14,996 per year. This bylaw will also introduce honorariums for officers and engineers that commit to an on-call schedule during the busy summer months and holiday weekends at an additional cost of $18,900. So the impact on the financial plan, the total impact of the proposed changes in call-out rates and stipends combined with the equipment and projects that have now been outlined in the 2022 to 26 financial plan is about $69,959. So this would result in an increase to the 2022 base taxation rate by 2%. And just, we've discussed this before, but just to review this again so everybody's familiar. So that call out money, which is currently at $15 per call for practice or attendance, that's not money that is paid out directly to firefighters. That's pooled by the association, which gets used for additional training for members. Currently, a big portion of it each year is getting paid towards extended health and dental benefit plans that are not currently available through the municipality. It supports the purchase of additional equipment. It gets put towards scholarships, community programs such as the Children's Swim Fund, the Food Bank, hospice, and many others around town. These funds and the ability for the firefighters to direct the spending of them plays a critical role in retention of the members and builds a great sense of pride in the organization. With regards to the on-call honorariums and how that breaks down, so again, as a review, the officers are on call in general about 7 weekends per year on a rotational basis. And during that time, they are 100% committed to the community and ready to respond immediately. I've broken down the hours of what that weekend of on-call looks like, but it totals 62 hours over the course of the weekend. And at that $450 rate for the weekend, that works out to $7.26 per hour, or 11.5 weeks based on a 37.5 hour work week throughout the year. So our recommendation is that the District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Bylaw number 1311/2021 be adopted. And if there are any questions, I am happy to take those now, and I will stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody.
Super. I'll open it up to questions for Chief Baker. Councillor Steer.
Yeah, this is more a comment, and I don't know if it's the serendipity of the moment today, but having just been on a call, a very intense call, and the community response that came forward, and I can only once again commend the fire department for their incredible professionalism. And I can tell you, when I arrive at the dock and I look over and I see those members there, it is an anxiety that is taken away from me at that moment. So I cannot, I would love to be able to make this motion. I cannot recommend this we get an incredible value for the service that is provided to this community. I'll stop there before I get emotional. So I'll let any other questions or comments.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. Any further questions for Chief Baker? Councillor Anderson, and I think Councillor Thick, did you have your hand up as well? Okay, in that order, please.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, and I agree with the recommendation in your report. My only question is, I commend your leadership of the fire department. I think it's come so far in the past, I don't know, 5 years or maybe a little bit more, from a point where we were really, having a hard time recruiting and having a hard time keeping that going to where it is now, where I think you have a waiting list for membership. So that's great. And my question is, it seems like a long time since we did update this bylaw and the fees associated with fire department. Is there a regular schedule? Do we do it every 5 years or 2 years, or what's the deal on that? Do we just wait till it's out of date and then decide to do it? How does that work?
There's not any sort of written regular schedule of when it gets reviewed. When I look back at historical reports to council over the last 15 years or more, it has come to council a number of times. Some of those requests have been not adopted. The one that, so our current bylaw actually from 2004, it's written that the call out rate is $12 per call or practice. That actually did change in, I believe, 2014, somewhere around there, or 2015. Under my predecessor, it went from $12 to $15 per call, and this is the first time it's come back to council since then. But I do feel that it is something that should be reviewed on a more regular basis, and I believe that's up to me to bring that forward. I think over the last few years we've tried to look at it as there are definite needs of equipment that perhaps we should put that over top of increasing some of these other fees. And this year, unfortunately, is a year where there is a real genuine need for both the equipment needs for the department and community, as well as bringing some of these up to more modern times. So, but a schedule for review is definitely something that we can look at for sure.
Thanks, Chief Baker.
Councillor Thick.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to echo the comments of the other councillors to the credit of the fire department. And I was doing a bit of research, and I described what was happening in our area to someone who'd been a fire chief previously, and that person was yeah, just really amazed, I think, at the support and just the quality of the people who volunteer. So again, just to say thank you, and kudos to all of those who have stepped up in the past and have done so today and will continue to do so in the future. And I just had one question too. Since we seem to be doing more in the area of rescue, I just wondered whether the department had ever considered a possible name change. You know, instead of maybe fire department, was there any thought of, it's just a question of like fire and rescue, or something other than just the fire department, because it seems like that role is expanding and needs to expand. So it's not a question that you need to answer necessarily today. It was just something for further deliberation. But thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thick. Seeing no further questions, no hands up, can somebody please make a motion? Councillor Steer.
I'll make the motion that the District of Tofino Fire and Life Safety Bylaw number 1311/2021 be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any further comments besides well done, Chief Baker?
Thank you very much.
All in favor? Motion is carried. We're going to move on to 10.2, Proposed Care Network Agreement, and we have a report from Chief Baker.
All right, thank you. Hopefully, when I say bear with me one moment, it will truly just be one moment this time. I do have a short presentation for this one. Okay.
Chief Baker, are you still the host?
I think so, and I think
Oh, you got it there. Perfect.
no, that's back to Fire and Life Safety Bylaw again. Sorry, everybody, but it's right here on my screen. I just can't seem to actually access it.
We have your fire and life safety bylaw screen up. Are you looking at a different screen?
I am looking at a proposed care network agreement screen, and
Any suggestions, Miss Best?
Mm.
There we
have
go.
we got the care network now?
Perfect.
Okay, I appreciate your patience here. Oh, man. Oh. Okay, there we go. I think we're in the right place now. We're all looking at proposed care network agreements. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so again, some background just to start with. So early in 2021, Care Network did appear before Council as a delegation to review the growing needs for enhanced animal services within the District of Tofino for both domestic and non-domestic animals. The presentation also highlighted the current District of Tofino facilities do not provide suitable space to support the collection and care for animals at large within the community for either short or long term. Council referred the proposal to the 2022 financial planning process. The Care Network had suggested an all-inclusive agreement valued at $30,000 per year for 4 years with a 2% increase per year. Services included such things as facilitating and managing dog and cat licensing campaign, the stray dog and cat patrols, including stray cat trapping around town, proactive patrols on beaches for dogs off leash and proper disposal of pet waste, kenneling stray and abandoned animals and rehoming animals as needed, providing access to affordable spay and neuter services, and conducting community animal census. Addressing our current needs, the short-term kenneling of stray and abandoned domestic animals to meet the needs of the current animal control bylaw is the area of highest challenge for the Protective Services Department. The number of dogs and cats at large within the community that get reported to the department does vary substantially year after year. Staff feel that the community would benefit with a fee-for-service agreement with a local or nearby service to ensure that resources are available to support these situations. And we think that a one-year pilot project could be established for this purpose to provide additional time to further survey the needs of the community and gather additional information for service development as the animal control bylaw is updated in the coming months. And at this time, staff is recommending that council will include up to $10,000 in the 2022 to 2026 financial plan for the purpose of domestic and animal impound and transport services with either a local or other West Coast service providers. And if there's any questions, I will stop sharing my screen.
Super, thank you, Chief Baker. I'm going to open it up for questions for Chief Baker, and we'll save any comments perhaps for after the Chief Baker has answered questions for clarity. Council, Councillor Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Baker. I had in the report, and I noted in the lengthy report that there was the question of the number of stray animals reported annually very substantially. I'm just curious if you could maybe give me at least a ballpark of what number. Is it 10 one year and 100 another year, or what would be a rough ballpark so I can get an idea of what that fee for service might look like in terms of financially?
Yeah, and so I can only speak to incidents that are reported directly to the bylaw department. So phone, make contact, leave a voicemail or an email. It might be 7 one year and it might be 25 another year. And the situation that we're often faced with when we do have an animal at large that does get collected and somebody needs to find a place to locate it, is it's often short term. It's often to the end of the business day or just a few hours beyond the end of the business day, and it doesn't very often go beyond that. But currently we don't have the facilities here to actually look after somebody else's pet for even a couple of hours. We do need to find some sort of service where we can have them still somewhat nearby or as accessible as possible, so that when the owners have tracked them down, they can be given back to their owners. But it can range quite dramatically like that. But
Okay, and could I have a follow-up question, please?
Yeah, you can have a follow-up question. We'll do that. We'll have one question and a follow-up question if you just give me a signal.
And so it just leads me to understand how would it be like a fee per animal type situation where it's up to a $10,000 amount that we're looking for, and if it was a reported animal, and whatever service provider we use would then bill us directly for that particular service, and there would be a fee set for that particular. Okay, I see you nodding, so I'll assume that.
Yeah, that's correct. And so just to clarify on that, because it is a good question. I think in a perfect world, we can come to an agreement where if we have the need, we make arrangements to either drop off the animal or have it picked up. We get invoiced for that amount. If it requires sheltering overnight or a couple of nights, that gets incorporated into that. When the owner collects that pet, they're going to be paying out those fees. And so, it can be fairly cost neutral overall. If we're not able to get that type of service from a local provider, it may require us to go with the likes of the SPCA in Port Alberni, where we can establish an agreement at a certain base rate, and then we pay for each incident on top of that. There's ups and downs to both scenarios, but so those are really our two options that we currently have available that we would try and to make work as best possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Thick.
Yeah, I had two questions. One was what happened with the facility that was proposed at the airport, and the second question is regarding the costs that are being requested of council. So maybe just to take one at a time, can you give me a quick synopsis of what happened at the ACRD lands out at the airport? That doesn't work, or that's not working now?
Unfortunately, I can't give you much in the way of details there. So the Care Network has worked hard to establish a facility out there. My understanding, and I could be off the mark here, my understanding is that they were looking to expand and secure an additional building, which was the building that was referenced in the article. Unfortunately, I don't know any of the details of what's transpired and why that's not an option at this time. And then as far as the funds that staff are asking for, is currently we don't have money in the budget for animal impounding and transportation, but we do come across this need. And so between ourselves and the Care Network proposal, I think we're some ways apart as far as where we see the dollar value being and what Care Network is suggesting that it may be. I'm working off of the numbers of animals that are reported to us in the department and looking at what I think might be a maximum that we may need within one season, and making sure that we're not short on funds in that area. And that's why I have suggested up to $10,000.
Right. So if I could just ask, so if the proposed cost is $30,000 per year for 4 years, and we are being asked to consider the $10,000 cost, are we to assume then that the $20,000 shortfall is that being made up by revenues from operating the system, or how does the shortfall get made up, I guess is my question, and why the $10,000 for council, or what are the sources of funding? Thank you.
I think perhaps the way I've written the report is lacking in some clarity. So Care Network has proposed an all-inclusive service for $30,000. So they would be looking after stray cat trapping, all those types of things. I don't feel that I have enough information to fully support that all-inclusive proposal at this time. My suggestion to council is that we, over the course of the 1 year, we put aside $10,000 to pay for services that I do believe that we may need at this time. That gives us 1 year to gather more information, to better identify what the true needs of the community are, so that for 2023, we can look at perhaps having that more all-inclusive service, or perhaps we are hitting the mark with what we're looking at today, and hopefully that clarifies that.
Thanks, Chief Baker. I do want to make a point that we're going to stick with Chief Baker's presentation, and the CARE network is referenced, but that is not on the table here. This is another motion. So, any other further comments from councillors, or sorry, questions from councillors before we move on to the motion? I see none. Ms. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Sorry to interrupt. As a point of order, we do have James Rogers from the CARE network here at the meeting, and he has requested to speak on an item, but this is not a delegation period. So I just wanted to advise Mr. Rogers that there is a question period later in the meeting, and that's an appropriate time for you to address any questions you may have on the proceedings.
That is correct. Thank you for that, Ms. Best. Yes, we do not take public comment for presentations or reports from staff. Excellent. Without further ado, then would someone like to make the motion? A councillor, Councillor Chalmers.
Sure, I'll move that council include up to 10,000 in the 2022-2026 financial plan for the purpose of domestic animal impound and transport services with either local or other West Coast service providers.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. And now is a time for debate and comment if council would like to make any. I see none. I do want to just make sure this time that, just to clarify, I appreciate the clarity on attempts to say cost neutral in this, and that this is up to $10,000 and it is a pilot project, and look forward to seeing more information come back that we can use for further financial planning and planning with animals within the district. So I will call a question. All in favor? And none opposed. Motion's carried. Thank you, Chief Baker.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to 10.3, we have a municipal and regional district tax, which is the MRDT. Oh, sorry, Councillor Steer.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Law. Could I have a 1 minute bio break? I'll be back in one minute.
We were very entitled to that. So
thank you.
We can actually call a we can call a recess for you. A point of order. So we will give Councillor Steer his 1 minute. All right, welcome back. Then we're back on track here. Once again, 10.3 municipal and regional district tax MRDT levy bylaw number 1312/2022 and renewal application. And I noticed on this one, a note for this one, there has been an amended Appendix 1 with some language changes, and I believe the recommendation, the second part of the recommendation also needs to be amended to remove and possibly year 1. But we'll just make a note of it now. And then I will turn it over to Ms. Atiana.
Thank you. Sorry, I just have a brief presentation, so I'll take a moment and share my screen. And I'll assume that everyone can see that. So great, thank you. So I'll just provide a brief overview of the renewal of the municipal and regional district tax renewal timeline, because it started last year in 2021 in October. So we are presenting today an application for renewal of a 3% municipal and regional district tax, along with the bylaw that's required in order to authorize the 3% tax to be taxed within the municipality. So we had 3 consultation sessions in October of 2021 with the fixed roof accommodation providers and presented a 5-year strategic business plan. After the consultation sessions, we requested support of the fixed roof accommodation providers in November of 2021, and the required support was not obtained at that time. We then requested an extension to the submission deadline, which is 6 months prior to the expiry of the current term. And for us, that is May 31st of 2022. The extension request was approved, and there's a recommendation to submit this towards the end of January. So we will aim to submit an application towards the end of next week. And that will allow the province enough time to review and get the approvals in place in advance of the current term's expiry of May 31st. After the extension was approved, we underwent further consultations with a more broader stakeholder group, and a memorandum of understanding was developed. I won't go over all aspects of the MOU today. I will speak to it in terms of what has been incorporated into the 5-year strategic business plan. That took place in December and January of this year. So the amended 5-year strategic business plan was sent out today. There was some back and forth between yesterday and today in finalizing the language for the strategic plan, and I'll go over the details of what was included in the most recent 5-year strategic business plan. We've requested support for the new and revised plan, and that is Friday. The deadline for that is Friday of this week. The application will be reviewed and finalized and submitted next week, as mentioned a moment ago. So again, this is a proposal 3% MRDT, which is the current rate of MRDT that we are charging. The original business plan that did not receive the required support included the following 2 points in it. It was a contribution in years 2 through 5 of the next MRDT term, which would be the lesser of 400,000 or 0.8% of the 3rd% of MRDT to debt servicing of the wastewater treatment plant. And we've included the lesser of so that if the 0.8% of that 3rd% does not reach 400,000, then we would not be accessing the 2% that is currently used for tourism, marketing, and other purposes. Year 1 of the next term would include a final year loan repayment of the visitor center, of which the 0.8% of the 3rd% would be used for that. And this was a plan that was not supported by the fixed roof accommodation providers. So the amended plan that was sent out today still includes these 2 components. And it also includes an aspect of the MOU that came out of the discussions with that more broader stakeholder group, which included representatives from the fixed roof accommodation providers. So the 5-year plan was amended to include those 2 points I just mentioned, or it still includes the 2 points just mentioned. And it also includes that the district may receive voluntary contributions for debt servicing of the wastewater treatment plant in years 2 through 5 of the next 5-year plan, and the 5-year MRDT term, and the district will transfer an equivalent amount to Tourism Tofino for tourism marketing programs and projects if those voluntary contributions are received. So essentially, the municipal and regional district tax will be replaced by the voluntary contributions if they are received. And so if $400,000 is received in year 2, in any year years 2 through 5 of the plan, and those would be, the MRDT would then be transferred to Tourism Tofino up to the amount that was received for the voluntary contributions, not to exceed the amount of MRDT in the year. So the next steps for the application process is that the municipality must pass a bylaw that requests the province levy the tax on its behalf. So we currently have a bylaw in place, and the one being introduced to council today would replace that bylaw on the effective date of June 1st, and it would repeal the existing bylaw. The MRDT bylaw will be brought to the February 2nd special council meeting for adoption if it receives support today, or if it receives 3 readings today, and then the application will be finalized next week and submitted to the province as long as the required support is received by this Friday, as indicated a moment ago. So I'm happy to answer any questions on this process. Just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Miss Atiana. That's great. So this is, I'm just going to open it up to council for questions, and we'll carry on with one question, one follow-up question for clarity, and then we can delegate our debate among council members and comments within the framework of the motion itself. So, Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on this, Nyla. My question is, what happens if the voluntary tax collected exceeds 400,000? Where would the excess amount go?
So the only information that I've received to date is that we may receive replacement for the MRDT amount that we retain. So from my understanding, 400,000 up to 400,000 could be received in the year, or the 0.8% amount, if it is less than that, is what we could or may expect in terms of voluntary contributions in a given year. And I could be wrong, so I do look to Bob to maybe clarify, or Mayor Law.
Mr. McPherson, I do have an answer for this. I did read the statement from West Coast Hospitality Association. If you would like to respond, or I can. Okay. The West Coast Hospitality Association has indicated that if there's excess funds beyond the 400,000, that they will either use those funds for other community initiatives, amenities, or I believe there's a donation to charities, local charities. And a small portion of the income would go to running the program, I believe, but it's a very small. And that is me just remembering off the top of my head from reading their statements and being in conversation with them. Councillor McMaster, if you have anything else to add. No. Any other questions for Ms. Atiana? I see none. Okay. Then I will actually read this out because I think there is a correction, and perhaps Ms. Best, the second portion of the recommendation, it was in years 2 through 5 of the next MRDT strategic business plan, and I'll just omit that small clause. Is that right? Okay, great. Then I will go ahead. I move that the District of Tofino Municipal and Regional District Tax Levy Bylaw number 1312/2022 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. And that's its own recommendation, so motion. So seconded by Councillor Steer. Any further comments, questions? Then all in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. And I'll move that staff be authorized to submit a renewal application for municipal and regional district tax at a rate of 3%, which includes a contribution to debt servicing for the wastewater treatment plant and associated infrastructure of the lesser of 400,000 per year, or the entire 0.8% of the additional or 1/3% of MRDT in years 2 through 5 of the next MRDT strategic business plan. Seconded by Councillor McMaster. Any comment? All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. Thank you, Ms. Atiana, for all your work on this. And thank you, Mr. McPherson, as well, for your tremendous amount of work on this. Moving right along, we have a housing agreement amendment bylaw number 1289.02. And this is, we have a report from Community Sustainability. Mr. Thick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I have a brief presentation. I'll just be sharing my screen here. Okay, so hopefully we're all looking at the screen that says HA Amendment-THC. As the title indicates, this is a presentation related to the Housing Agreement Amendment report that was part of the council package. So quick background, this is the DL 114 development that was initiated by the Tofino Housing Corporation, intended to develop affordable housing within the District Lot 114 area. So there was a portion of that area that was rezoned in 2020. There was a housing agreement that was originally adopted in conjunction with that rezoning. An amendment has already been made to that agreement. These amendments that have been requested are requested at the behest of BC Housing acting as the primary funder of the project. They have particular requirements that they need to meet as an organization for any of the funding of their projects. And so they have requested originally one amendment. Now we're considering another amendment in order for BC Housing to meet their requirements as an organization and not have any conflicting agreements that may compromise their ability to provide affordable housing. So these changes are necessary for the overall funding of the project. BC Housing is the primary funder, and essentially, as I've noted, they want to make sure that any of the projects they fund meet their mandate as an organization. So the main proposed change is that we've introduced a definition for the idea of the operating agreement. This would be the agreement that takes place between BC Housing and Catalyst and the Tofino Housing Corporation as owners and operators of the housing on the land. BC Housing just wants to make sure that any terms of that agreement, their funding agreement, take precedence in the event of a conflict between the District of Tofino Housing Agreement and the operating agreement. BC Housing has some fairly strict rates in terms of what they consider affordable rental rates. Their rates are actually lower than what's contemplated currently by the existing housing agreement, and they just want to make sure that the housing agreement does not allow Catalyst to charge a greater rate of rental than what they would permit. And again, their permitted rates are actually lower than what the District of Tofino has already contemplated. So there was already some general language that permitted that. According to their lawyers, it wasn't sufficient. So additional specific language has been added to ensure that there's no conflict and that the operating agreement does take precedence when there is any sort of perceived conflict. There are a number of unchanged items. I think primarily the most important unchanged item is that the housing agreement still specifies who may rent the units. It defines what a qualified person is and talks about how they're to be selected. And it does determine the maximum rents that have already been considered by council when in the case that the BC housing rates do not apply. So the BC housing rates are less than what is permitted by the housing agreement currently. These rates will apply to, in my understanding, approximately 70% of the units. 30% of the units will be governed under the rates that are considered by the housing agreement. And in the opinion of staff, the proposed change is generally in line with the goal of the overall development, which is to provide affordable housing. Catalyst will be obliged to provide lower rental rates than initially thought. It's worth mentioning here, though, that Catalyst has received or will be receiving a significant capital grant from BC Housing for the initial construction of the project. However, due to the obligations that they are required to honor through their agreement with BC Housing, they will actually be unable to make their mortgage payments due to the low rental rates. And so BC Housing will also be providing an additional monthly top up, essentially, so that Catalyst can continue to meet their mortgage responsibilities as well as provide the rates that are being requested by BC Housing and the District of Tofino. And if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to speak to them. It's also worth taking a quick note for council's information that Ian Scott, the executive director of the THC, is also listening in on this call.
Thank you, Mr. Thick. Do we have questions for Mr. Thick? I think it's pretty straightforward and easy to understand. Mr. Thick, looks like you have no questions.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Chalmers.
I'm happy to move the motion that the District of Tofino Housing Agreement Amendment Bylaw number 1289.02 2022 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor McMaster had his hand up first, I think there. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. $10.5, we have a development variance permit for 315 Main Street. I believe we have a report from either Mr. Thick or Mr. Rogers, or Miss Patterson, of course.
Hello, good evening. I do have a new headset, so can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Great. And I too have a brief presentation. I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen here. Okay, so this evening I'm presenting a development variance application for 315 Main Street on behalf of the McQuinnett Enterprises Incorporated. The subject property, as mentioned, was for 315 Main Street. It is located in the downtown core. It's within the commercial district zoning C2A. So represented here on the 2006 graphic. I chose this picture because it's very clearly shows that the subject lot has been cleared for quite some time. In that bottom right corner of the red square is the location of a partially constructed accessory structure. And the adjacent lots to the left are, all four connecting lots that are owned by McQuinnett Enterprises. So all zoned within the C2A and used for different purposes. We're all familiar with the McQuinnett Hotel and Restaurant that is on the corner lot there. Sandwiched between the subject lot in the corner is a residential property I believe they use for staff accommodation. And then the 315 is just the vacant lot. The proposal is seeking a variance to permit the construction of a accessory building prior to the construction of a principal building. No other variance is required or being requested at this time. Through staff's evaluation, we determined that the structure generally aligns with the OCP objectives. The design generally aligns with the community vision. The structure conforms to zoning guidelines for siting, size, height. It was professionally designed and engineered to minimize impacts to surrounding viewscapes. And the designer has implemented cladding and landscape screening incorporated into the design for visual appeal. Public notification for this proposal was distributed to a 60-meter radius of the subject property 10 days prior to the meeting date, and up until the deadline prior to this meeting, I received one phone call that started out as an inquiry and ended up in support of the existing structure, and 0 in response and opposition. Staff recommend that the variance is approved as presented in the development variance permit that was attached to the report. With the condition of a security in the amount of $5,000. That $5,000 was established in communications with a professional service disposal company out of Nanaimo, which was the closest business that did such a service. And this was based on the estimate that was provided for removal of a building should there be unsafe conditions presented from failure to comply with our permit conditions. I now open the floor for questions and comments, should you have any.
Thank you for your succinct and clear presentation. Any questions for clarity for Ms. Patterson, Councillor Anderson, and then Councillor Thick?
Hi, I had 2 questions. One from your report, table 3, the side yard setback. The proposed side yard setback is 0.71 meters, but my understanding of it, the limit is not to be less than 3 meters. So are we also varying the side yard setback in this proposal, in this motion?
We're not. So I'm just going to pull up my report for reference here. Bear with me for a moment. I believe the table that you're referring to has the comparisons. And for the side yard setback in particular, so the evaluation was done, the interpretation of our zoning would consider this lot to be a through lot, but it was a little bit of a challenge because there were no buildings on the property. And so we were sort of evaluating the structure without the presence of a principal building to which the setbacks were related to. And so for the side yard setbacks in the commercial zoning, it's a combined sum shall not be less than 3 meters. And so the combined sum being both side yards. So given that it's an empty lot, you could essentially in a commercial zone build right up to the property line as long as the opposing side yard was 10 feet.
Okay, thanks. That's, yeah, I understand it now.
Okay.
And I have a second question, but I'll let Councillor Thick go first.
We could do a follow-up question, Councillor Anderson. We'll do one question, one follow-up, and then we'll go on.
Well, it's not really a follow-up, it's a separate question, but I'll go ahead. I'm just wondering that normally a building on this property would be subject to development permit and the design review. Would that happen on this building at some point, or would that be sort of triggered by the principal building being built?
Yeah, again, this was the tricky part. So we did issue them an exemption from the development permit process because the exemption that applied here was for accessory buildings that were constructed in the rear yard. So given that we were sort of viewing the main street as the principal access and the laneway being considered the rear yard in relation to the development permit requirement, the exemption did apply. So they were not subject to the design review, but I thought it was important to include those parts within the report, given the view that was being presented with the lack of the principal building being there, hence the cladding and the landscape screening that we implemented with those.
Okay, thank you. That's been addressed then. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to Councillor Thick.
Yeah, my question was similar, and when I walked by the building, I'm just two things. I'm assuming that the accessory building will meet the standards that were just passed in the bylaw last meeting with regard to shipping containers. So it will meet all of those criteria. That's the first question. And I too noticed the proximity to the yard, the adjacent property, and I was wondering if those landscape buffers were going to be, just whether all of that was going to be, the landscape buffers in particular, from an aesthetic point of view, was going to be upheld in the final approval. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question. So yes, I was anticipating that shipping container bylaw was being presented for consideration. And so when reviewing this application, it was important to distinguish between the variance that was being requested, which was the building of the accessory building prior to the principal building, and then all of the building components, so the requirements to meet the BC building code, would be managed in accordance with the building permit process. So the applicants have submitted their building permit and they're in the works. Nicholas Henderson, the building inspector, has been communicating with them regularly, and it sounds like that they will be implementing access doors, safety lighting, emergency lighting, and other elements that would be required to ensure that those safety requirements for the BC building, for a building would be met. And so, yes, this also the security that was implemented is to ensure that these conditions, meeting the BC building code requirements, meeting the landscaping requirements, and then the safety aspect of it as well. We have a partially constructed accessory building now sitting there awaiting permissions to finalize the construction. So the security will ensure that all of those details are addressed.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, would somebody like to make the motion?
Maybe I'll do this one.
Council.
I'll move the
Councilor
recommendation. We'll move the recommendation that council approve development variance permit number 01-22 attached as appendix 1 to this report to vary District of Tofino zoning bylaw 770 1997 for lot 4 block 7 district lot 114 Tla-o-qui-aht district 717 PID 02002 249995 as follows. Very part 4.12A of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw 770 1997 to allow an accessory building or structure to be independently erected on the subject lot prior to a principal building or structure as shown on the proposed design attached as Exhibit A to DVP 0122.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Patterson. We have zoning 10.6, zoning amendment bylaw number 1273, 2019 for 1101 Pacific Rim Highway. Now we do have, it's a trifecta of community sustainability. Wonderful. Go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to be presenting presenting a presentation in relation to a third reading for 1101 Pacific Rim Highway, also known as Mackenzie Beach Resort. So a little bit of background on the application. We received this application in early 2018, and over the last 3 years have worked through the development process up until last December 14th, where we had a public hearing for the application. The intent of the zoning is to address some land use inconsistencies, slightly adjust the current zoning boundary and add some accessory uses. There is official community plan support for this application. Although it deals with commercial accommodation, it is actually downzoning. It is actually considered a downzoning, and build out of this new zone will result in a minimal expansion of the existing resort, but much less than what it is currently zoned for. Really quickly with our use and density, again, the principal use here is tourist accommodation. Secondary uses are related to the resort, such as a spa or a restaurant. There can be a maximum of 250 people on site, and broken down to 50 tent camping sites, 10 recreational vehicle sites, 20 cabins, and 12 legacy cabins. At our public hearing, we received 4 responses from the public. 2 were addressing the expansion of use concern, which was addressed in the previous reports, and again this evening, with the understanding that this is actually a reduction in use rather than expansion in use. And then there were 2 responses to deal with Mackenzie Beach Road and the condition of that road, which has not been addressed through this zoning application. There is one minor amendment in front of council today. The map that serves as a schedule to the bylaw has been updated based on a survey. So before it was more of a site plan, and we had the applicant following second reading resurvey it to make sure that it's completely accurate. And so we've inserted that map into the bylaw, which matches up with the site plan map that was previously provided. And so as for our next steps, the one thing outstanding left to do is to finalize the development agreement. This agreement would see parking developed on district right-of-way for both the district and the applicant, as well as providing public access from Mackenzie Beach Road to Mackenzie Beach. It will also include some consideration for some riparian work on site, as well as the relocation of campsites from a known archaeological area on the beachfront. Once we work through that agreement, we'll come back to council for final reading. Currently, I've met with the director of engineering and the manager of Piscavy to discuss the application, and we have a good internal roadmap for moving forward. I've met with the applicant and again meeting with him this week, as well as working with our lawyers to draft the agreement. So council could most likely expect to see this within the next 2 to 3 months back for final reading once the agreement has been signed. And that's it for today for third reading of the zoning application.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Any questions from council for Mr. Rogers? Councillor Thick.
Thank you. So as I just want to be clear that from what you have just spoken about the parking that you're alluding to, Mr. Rogers, is that the parking that is close to the beach, or is it the parking that is associated with something else? Like there's that, yeah, I think the lines are a little bit skewed. So I just wondered what parking we're going to be talking about. I'm interested to know, are we going to be talking about that at a near date? And will we be also considering what possibilities exist for the improvement of that road? Thank you.
Thank you. The earlier reports, we presented a site plan that outlined the rough idea for that parking. So if council's okay with it, I'll just pull it off the file here and just pull it up so everybody can see what we're talking about. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay. So these are just the work to turn this into a proposal to an actual design have yet to occur. That's what staff will be working on, but it's basically the district's right of way goes through here, and we're looking at developing some parking here for the applicants who will have to move their parking for us to receive access, and then for the district to have some parking along here that doesn't currently exist. The conversation may include a bus turnaround and provision for a space for a future washroom. And again, that's this is partially because of is to help the resort maintain its current traffic flow, which it's had for 3 or 4 decades, as well as to compensate them for the loss of parking that they have to move from around this area to here. So these are the conversations that staff will have with the applicant, and then what will happen at final reading is we'll come to council with the plan and ensure that the plan meets council's expectations, and then if it does, and go move forward with final reading. But we've agreed to have this conversation at this time between third and final, but there's a significant amount of work yet to be accomplished in terms of the actual design, and that's also why I'm working with Director of Engineering and our future plans for Mackenzie Beach Road, where this design that we get will probably be the initial condition of the amenity, and then upon redevelopment of Mackenzie Beach, whether that be 1 year, 3 years, or 10 years, we would be looking at some sort of a final approach. So this will be the interim treatment, so to speak. But what we really need to get right is the agreement that allows us to do this, and the footprint of the area, so that we don't, in the future realize we don't have enough rooms to put a washroom there, or we don't have enough room to deal with something, a bus turnaround. So that's the kind of conversation that we'll be having with the applicant and the designers and our staff and our lawyers over the next couple of months.
Thank you for clarifying that. I look forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, would somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Chalmers, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, the report attached as Appendix 2 containing a summary of the nature of the representations respecting District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1273 2019 that were made at the public hearing be received by council and maintained as a public record.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried.
Okay, and I'll move that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1273 2019 be read a third time.
Seconded by Councillor McMaster. All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving right along to 10.7, zoning amendment bylaw number 1296, 2020 Main Street. And we have a report from Community Sustainability. Mr. Thick.
Hello again, Mayor and Council. I have a brief presentation for this as well, and I'll be sharing my screen. Okay, so this particular presentation has to do with the report that was included as in Council's package regarding a sort of a rescinding of a zoning amendment that's in progress for the property at 380 Main Street. That's the foreshore lease associated with the shore development. So it's been a little while since this has appeared before council, so it might be worth spending a minute just describing some background. This zoning amendment was initially applied for in 2018, and it's intended to facilitate a subdivision of the foreshore lease. The applicant has been working with the province to subdivide the existing foreshore lease to create a new parcel of land that is separate from the foreshore lease. A small portion of the foreshore lease has been filled in some decades ago, is my understanding, with rock and various fill, and that would be the portion of the foreshore lease that is no longer water and can be subdivided to create a new parcel of land. It did receive third reading, I believe, earlier in 2021, and the public hearing had been waived prior to that. It was scheduled for adoption. However, just prior to being brought forward to council for adoption, some updated information was provided by the applicants that indicated the proposed lot was going to be smaller than what was initially considered. So as the actual size of the lot that will be that is proposed to be subdivided is smaller than what was originally understood, we need to now amend the bylaw to incorporate this smaller size. So the required change is to reduce the overall size from approximately 600 square meters to 510 square meters. Staff's understanding is that after survey, it was understood that the area to be subdivided is about 514 square meters. So we've reduced the minimum lot size for the shore comprehensive development zone to 510 square meters in order to accommodate this new parcel size. So the current bylaw that exists in the zoning right now and the current bylaw that was originally proposed would not permit this subdivision as was requested by the applicant. And so we're looking at amending this bylaw as it's moving through readings and heading towards adoption. I included the previous reports to council that have a little bit more detail as appendices to this report. Hopefully they're able to kind of bring council back up to speed as to what the application is all about. It's a little bit of a complicated one, but should not result in any physical change to the area. It's mostly a shuffling of kind of legal ownership so that the applicant can separate two of the assets. The applicant currently owns a unit in the shore building, as well as is the lease holder for the foreshore lease. The foreshore lease has to be tied to some parcel of land in the upland portion of the property, and the applicant is looking to separate those two assets. He's looking to separate the existing condo that is within the shore development from being tied to this foreshore lease, and he would like to tie it to a new parcel of land, which is why he's looking to create this new parcel of land. So after this change was brought to staff's attention, we realized that we would have to rescind third reading and go back through the public hearing process. According to the Local Government Act, if there's a change that's made to a bylaw after the public hearing that would potentially affect the density of the zone, we need to rescind that and go through public hearing again. So initially the public hearing was waived. Staff recommend waiving it again. We'll be again bringing it back forward for third reading, likely within a month or 6 weeks for council's consideration again. The applicant has a deal with the province that is in staff's understanding expiring towards the end of March, and so we're hoping to work with the applicant to either move this forward or if council decides that it's no longer appropriate to stop the zoning amendment, so that there can be a little bit of clarity given. However, once again, at the end of the day, there will be very little physical change to the property, and I understand that this is a little bit of a confusing zoning amendment, because typically when we're considering a rezoning, we're expecting some sort of development to be associated with it. This is a little bit more of a legal shuffle or a land ownership shuffle as opposed to a development proposal. If there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to speak to them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Thick. Questions from council for clarity? Councillor Thick, go ahead.
I just was curious, I guess, what sort of staff time has been spent on this file, and what is the application fee for such an undertaking?
The application was originally received in 2018, which was before I joined the district. I'm not sure how much time my predecessor, Dana Hawkins, spent on the file, but not much had been done. Not much work had been done on it when I came into the position. So I would estimate that I've spent a number of days kind of working on it. However, it's not a overly complex zoning application, so it's not one that I've spent a significant amount of time on. Redoing the public hearing process, if the process is waived, there's still notification that needs to be happen in conjunction with that. I'll probably be speaking with our financial services department to understand how we might charge for a second notification fee. But as far as specific hours, it's difficult to give you a particular number. And the original cost for the application, I believe, was this was prior to an update to the fees and services bylaw. So I believe it was about $2,300, somewhere around $2,000 to $2,300 is my understanding.
Thank you. I had a couple other comments, but I'll wait for others to have their turn. Thank you.
Just, yeah, if you have comments, Councillor Thick, we can discuss them when the motion, but if you have questions for clarity for Mr. Thick, please go ahead. And you can go ahead. There's no other questions that I can see.
Okay, I just was, I was trying to understand this a little bit further because I wasn't here in 2020 when it came to council and all those discussions took place. So one of my questions was, the legal implications, but I think you've addressed that. The other thing I was curious about was the liability, the potential liability to the district. Is there anything that we should be thinking about when such a parcel is separated from an upland portion like this? And I don't know, I think I understand that that the district wouldn't be liable if there was any sort of problems either accessing or a foreshore lease, but because it involves a building, and I don't have clarification on whether there'd be any potential liability to the district with this separation.
Certainly, I think the first thing that I would comment on is that we're not subdividing the land. We're not actually subdividing the upland portion at all. The upland portion is a strata subdivided lot, so all the area around the building is common ownership shared by members of the strata corporation that all own units within that structure. And so in order to subdivide the upland lot, just for reference, it would take 60 to 70%. I'm not sure exactly. It kind of depends on the strata bylaws, I believe, but it would take a significant cooperation between various owners of those units in order to come forward and subdivide off a portion of the common area that's in front of the building. What is happening is that the foreshore lease, so the lease that's in front of the upland property, is being subdivided, and so this is not a legal parcel in any way currently, but it's being created through a crown grant, I guess is kind of the term that you'd use for the initial creation of a parcel, and so this is crown land that's now becoming privately owned. And so the applicant has a deal to purchase this land off of the province. And then his rationale in purchasing the land is that he would like to separate these assets and would like to have the condo unit independently or independent from the foreshore lease. And so the foreshore lease does have to be tied to some portion of upland property. And so in order to do that, the applicant is looking to create a new lot that can basically be tied to this foreshore lease, and so it can be retained legally, and then those two assets can be separated. As far as the actual subdivision process, my understanding is that's primarily handled by the province. So the districts, I'm guessing that will be referred through the process, but whether or not, typically through a subdivision process, the applicant would have to provide access and services to the lot line. I'm not sure how that will be addressed in this particular case, as I don't have much familiarity with the province's process of subdivision in this particular situation where we're looking at the creation of a new parcel. However, we have requested that there be a no-build covenant over the property, so it's essentially impossible for anything to be built on that parcel. It's quite an awkward parcel too. Even without the no-build covenant, it would be quite difficult to construct anything. So from staff's perspective, we have enough redundancy in the process that we're not anticipating any kind of unexpected, unplanned, undesirable effects from this. But it is certainly a little bit of a strange situation where we're not kind of following a typical development process that maybe staff and council are used to seeing. We're kind of working in conjunction with a higher level of government for the subdivision portion of this, and we're just handling the rezoning portion of this. The provincial government actually noted that they would be unable to subdivide the lease unless this rezoning was first granted. And so that's kind of what's necessitated the applicant coming to us first to request for the rezoning, and then go back to the province to request for the subdivision and the eventual purchase of this new parcel. So hopefully that was a bit of a ramble, but hopefully some of that made sense.
Yeah, and just lastly then, as I understand it from the report, we are going, if we agree to this, we will be guaranteed a statutory right-of-way along the edge of the property, and we have a no-build covenant, and the access for any community residents or members of the public, the access to that foreshore lease is guaranteed to us. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. That's one of the kind of central focuses of this application from the district side, at least, is to maintain that public access that exists from the 2006, I believe, 2006-2007 rezoning that originally created that development. Currently, the area that is considered the foreshore lease has a sublease over it. and that sublease would be essentially changed into a statutory right-of-way as that portion of the foreshore lease becomes an actual property. The advantage to the district is that a statutory right-of-way can exist on title in perpetuity, where as the sublease is only effective as long as the lease is in place. So it guarantees us a little bit of a more long-term legal instrument, like encouraging public access through that area. However, from a daily walking experience perspective, nothing will be changed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thick. Seeing no further questions, would somebody like to make the motion?
I could do that.
Chalmers. Oh. I think Councillor Chalmers had her hand up, but okay, go ahead. She's waving you on there. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Okay. I'll move that third reading of District of Tofino bylaw number 1296, 2020 be rescinded, and that District of Tofino bylaw number 1296, 2020 be amended at second reading by reducing the minimum lot size of lot in part 41D.1 from 2160 square meters to 510 square meters, and that the requirement for a public hearing for the District of Tofino bylaw number 1296, 2020 be waived.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 10.8, we have a Development Approvals Framework Contract Award. We have another report from Community Sustainability.
Great, thank you. This is a very short presentation that is in regards to the Development Approvals Framework recommendation to award a contract. A really brief overview. This project is 100% grant funded. The intent is to update, improve, and streamline our development approval process. This grant was developed to help move the development of housing in the province forward by speeding up municipal processes. As staff, we issued a request for proposals for the project and received 5. Out of the 5, Urban Systems was a superior proposal. They have an experienced team that are familiar with the Tofino context, as well as one of their team members has a fair amount of experience and expertise in the development of development approvals frameworks for municipalities. So we're really excited to hopefully work with that person. And that leads me to the last slide, which is that council approve the recommendation in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Any questions from council for this, for Mr. Rogers? Okay, seeing Councillor Steer.
Not a question. I was just going to read the motion if that was.
Sure. Let me just go through, let me just ask for questions first. We'll do protocol, and then go ahead. Please go ahead now and read the motion.
Recommend that the Tofino Development Approvals Framework contract be awarded to Urban Systems Limited based on the proposal price of $251,956 plus GST.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? Seeing no opposition, motion's carried. We'll move right along then. 10.9, Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. And we have a report from Community Sustainability. Keith, Mr. Orchiston.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nice to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. No presentation from staff on this report tonight, but I am here if you have any questions.
Thank you. I think this is pretty straightforward, and this is essentially an administrative motion. Is that right?
Yes, I do believe so.
Excellent. But I will say, any questions from council? Seeing none, would somebody like to read the motion?
Make the motion that the District of Tofino agrees to partner with the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District on the Union of BC Municipalities 2022 Community Emergency Preparedness Grant, Emergency Operations Center Training and Supplies Grant, and therefore authorize the ACRD to apply for and receive and manage grant funding on behalf of the District of Tofino.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. No opposition. Excellent. 10.10 was moved to the consent agenda, if you're following along in the written agenda, which means, which moves us to business initiated by council members. Do we have any? Seeing none. We are moving on to unfinished business, and there is nothing on the agenda. We have question period. Ms. Best, do we have anybody signed up for question period? Councillor Steer?
Sorry, did I miss 10.10 special event permit Surf Canada Nationals?
We moved that in. We moved that into the consent agenda.
Sorry.
At the
forgive me. I had my head knocked a little bit today, so.
Yeah, you wanted to speak on that.
No, it's okay. No, good.
You missed your chance.
I know. Thank you.
No. Question period. Ms. Best, do we have anybody signed up for question period?
Thank you, Mayor Law. Yes, we have one member of the public. It's Mr. James Rogers. So, Mr. Rogers, I will allow you to speak, and you have up to 2 minutes to ask questions on a specific item on the agenda. So, one moment here.
And I just want to make, just want to clarify too, just point this out, for question period, this is questions for council, not for staff. And I'll open it up if there are questions for specific council. Mr. Rogers, please ask. Otherwise, I'll open up any questions to council, to all of council to respond. Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Hi there. Just wanted to clarify a couple of things and of course ask a question. Just to answer the question.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
I do want to make just a quick point here. This is for question period, so it's not for delegation. So this time is for you to ask questions of council for clarity or for further information, et cetera, et cetera. Just to be clear.
Okay. Perhaps if the number of animal incidents in the District of Tofino was much greater than recorded through the protection services by a factor of 10, would that perhaps make a difference to this concept of a pilot project, especially given that we've been having this conversation for at least the last 3 years?
That's a question. So you're asking, just to clarify, and then I'll open it up for council or maybe respond myself. So you're asking council if there were larger data sets to consider, would council change opinion? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for instance, if 168 animals in the District of Tofino needed help in 2020, as opposed to the 8 recorded by the protection services, would that difference make shift how this concept is moving forward with a $10,000 pilot project, which certainly doesn't work on the care network side of things?
I think actually, I mean, data is always important to council. I'll just answer this one, and I actually personally look forward to seeing the pilot project explored and seeing what kind of data we can come up with and going forward. And I'm sure that this, as a pilot project, will change and adapt as time goes on. Any other responses from council? No, go ahead. Do you have any other questions for council, Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, just wondering if it's still a concern or a question for council about the per capita cost. I believe it was in a previous meeting or presentation in terms of the difference between what it costs for animal services if provided by the district internally or externally, if those numbers are still of interest since the last meeting. I believe that was Councillor Steer's question at the last budget meeting.
Anybody in council like to answer this Mr. Rogers question? Sorry, Councillor Steer, I see you
quickly comment. I think the questions were related to this particular report and not to the previous council meeting information session. So I don't know about the inappropriate answer at this point for that particular question. Other than the fact that the report, this particular report to council was based on the perceived needs of the District of Tofino from our protective service manager. And in that report, he outlined what those specific needs were in terms of the short-term kenneling aspect. So that's the report that we've received from protective services. And that's the information that we have presently. And that's what our decision, I collectively made the decision today to move that $10,000 up to $10,000 pilot project forward.
Further questions, Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, just curious about any.
Try to keep it on council decisions today for today's agenda.
Yeah, just curious about after-hours services for animal services, and if that $10,000 addresses in any way animal needs in the non-protective services hours of operation, and how the gas and overtime might factor into going to Port Alberni with animals through the summer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this works as a pilot project, and I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers come back. And I think in that sense, from my point of view, time will tell.
Okay, well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Ms. Best, do we have anybody else signed up for question period?
Thank you, Mayor Law. There are no other requests, but I will call a second time if there's anyone else in the public watching wanting to ask a question to council. I'll call a third time. And seeing none, there are no more questions.
Then would somebody like to make the recommendation to move into the closed session? Councillor Thick, go ahead.
Yeah, move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to A, personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent. C, employee relations. K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? Motion's carried. We're moving into closed session.